After 12 hours of casting their votes, now it's time to see the results. It's Election Day in Oklahoma. From the Oklahoman, I'm Dave Morris. Thanks so much for tuning in tonight. We've had more traffic on our site, oklahoman.com tonight than we had at any point tonight because people wanting to see the answers to the questions. They fill in those boxes. They went to the ballots today. And one of the questions we had was just how many people would go to the polling places to cast their votes. You can follow along all night long on oklahoman.com. We'll have various video updates. We also have a social media feed as well as results from the state election. I'm joined by my colleagues, as I always am on Election Day, Chris Castile, Kayla Branch, and Carmen Foreman. And we'll start with Carmen because one of the big questions today was state question 802. And Carmen, it's some interesting results coming in on that race.
Yeah, maybe I was overly confident when we talked earlier today. It's very close, but I think there's still a lot of Oklahoma City, Oklahoma County precincts that haven't been counted yet. Let's see, right now it's at about 52%, 52% for the state question, 48% against the state question. And that's with 450,000 votes being counted already and
so
68%.
We have a ways to go on that, Carmen, but the reason we find it so interesting was the absentee voting was so one-sided on this.
Yeah, and we could have guessed that the absentee voting numbers had more Democrats responding than Republicans. And of course, Democrats are more likely to support Medicaid expansion. But this is closer than I thought it was going to be, I'll admit. But I'm no political expert, though I pretend to be one occasionally.
Very good. And I guess I should clarify at this point, the proposal, yes, is leading. Although that margin was huge earlier, it's a little bit less now. It'll be interesting to follow that race throughout the night. Let me bring in one political expert we certainly have on the panel, Mr. Chris Castile. On the congressional side of things, a lot of familiar names had big wins tonight, or early projection as winners.
Yeah. A couple of ones that we talked about that were easy to predict, and that was Jim Inhofe being nominated again to run for another term for Senate on the Republican side, and former Oklahoma City television reporter Abby Broyles winning on the Democratic side. Before I talk about the 5th District, I just wanted to ask Carmen about the rural areas and the state question, because there was such a big appeal in their ad campaign for rural hospitals. A lot of the settings of their ads were in rural areas about bringing Oklahoma money back. I was just wondering, Carmen, if Oklahoma City's still out, as we know that a lot of it is because we're watching races in Oklahoma City, does that mean it's getting killed in the rural areas or close in the rural areas?
Yeah, so a lot of the rural precincts have already reported all their or most of their votes, and that's where it's overwhelmingly Republican, overwhelmingly conservative. They're more likely to vote against it, and if there are still a lot of votes left in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma County, those are more likely to go in favor of the state question. Though a source had texted me earlier and said that, oh, look, if you look at it this way, it appears that there are about 20,000 Republicans that had voted for Medicaid expansion, essentially. And his math was, not exact, of course, the tally's still coming in. But So I think, they did try to appeal to rural areas, and you would think, with the messaging, oh, your rural hospital is going to close because we haven't expanded Medicaid, or it is the reason your rural hospital has closed. It doesn't appear that messaging seemed to work too well in rural Oklahoma.
Yeah, and God, with the frequency that they ran some of those commercials, about the rural aspect of it, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Dave, I'm sorry, but to get back to the 5th District race, which is the one we're all watching, the Republican primary in the 5th District was the Oklahoma City area congressional seat. Early lead that she's built on is longtime businesswoman Carrie Neese, who had her own personnel agency for a long time. Is very, very well known in the GOP statewide, but really here in the area where she had her office. And behind her by 10 points, the last time I checked, was State Senator Stephanie Bice of Oklahoma City. So I think Neese was in the mid-30s, Bice was in the mid-20s. David Hill, the Oklahoma City businessman, owns a car parts manufacturer. Was like about 17, and Janet Barisi was about 11. And this was with, I think, about a third of the vote in. So if it stays that way, and it might not, I think Nice is definitely in, but, depending on where the vote is so far, which I don't know, it could still change between Bice and Hill. I mean, it doesn't seem like it will, but looks like Nice is in, and we're just kind of watching what, the second spot will be.
But you bring up a good point on Twitter and by the way, feel free to follow my colleagues on social media all night long as they provide some context to the races that they're following. But you brought up a good point about the money on this. If it is Bice versus Nice, Nice has the war chest.
She does. She has a very healthy bank account that she has contributed most of the money. I think maybe 2/3 of the money in her campaign has come from personal funds, and she can do it again. And in the 2 months between a primary and a runoff, Bice has burned through an incredible amount of money. And I talked to her about it last week, and it was this, it sounds like she was spending a lot, which is what fundraising is. You have to spend a lot to get a little, but she's burned through, I think, almost $700,000. And if she kind of squeaks in there, and she's not going to have much momentum going into that race, whereas Nice will have a lot. And she might have the Club for Growth against her. Again, we talked about earlier, they spent about $350,000 attacking her last week. So she would, in essence, have two well-funded opponents against her.
Also,
you would think being a state senator, she should have some name recognition already. The fact that she had to spend boatloads to get where she might squeak in, that does not sound like it bodes well for a runoff if she makes it.
I agree. I didn't understand it. I've been watching campaign spending for 30-something years, and I just couldn't figure out where that money was going. 2 consultants, a lot of it. She has Kevin Stitt's consultant from 2018, a guy named Cam Savage, and he charges big bucks, but a lot of her fundraising consultants too. It's she just burns through almost everything she raises.
One of the other races a little bit closer to home, I say that because my home is in downtown Oklahoma City, and among the skyline is the Oklahoma County Jail. Kayla, I'm coming your way because one of the races we're following is the various candidates for sheriff.
Yeah, so Oklahoma County Sheriff races, they're going pretty much how I expected. There were 3 folks who were running in the Republican primary, and current Sheriff P.D. Taylor, he has been carrying with about a 10 to 12 point lead since they have started reporting votes. So I expect that to stay consistent. Right now, we were at about 35% of the precincts reporting in Oklahoma County, which includes, obviously Oklahoma City, a large portion, but also towns like Hera, Choctaw, Bethany, things like that. So he looks pretty steady right now. And then on the Democratic side, we had Wayland Cubitt. He's been with about a 30-point lead, which also isn't surprising. He was kind of a crowd favorite, just looking on social media and the type of engagement he was getting on his Facebook and Twitter pages. So it looks like he will definitely stay in the lead, but still, P.D. Taylor, current sheriff, he didn't have that, majority plus 1%. So could still be a runoff with the Republican candidates in August.
Yeah, Cubitt by far pulling in the most votes if you look at those 5 candidates overall for sheriff. And that is a position, sheriff, that changes in a couple days. It's a story that you currently have on Oklahoman.com. Let's dive into that briefly about how the sheriff's role changes.
Absolutely. So starting tonight at midnight, the Oklahoma County Sheriff will no longer manage the county jail. And that has never happened in Oklahoma County. It was something that's been in the works for over a year now. And they are transitioning management away from the sheriff's office because of a history of mismanagement and serious problems at the county jail. And so the position of sheriff is going to look a lot different. They're going to be managing a really small budget compared to what they were doing, and they're just going to be focusing in on law enforcement, which I think probably bodes well for them, just in terms of they aren't going to have to answer a bunch of questions about why this or that's going wrong at the jail, because they won't be in charge of it anymore. So it'll be interesting going forward, seeing what's happening. We've got the Democratic challenger, Waylon Cubitt. He's an Oklahoma City police officer. Obviously, current Sheriff P.D. Taylor, he served on Oklahoma City Police Force for a long time. And then the man, Tommy Johnson, who is his potential Republican runoff challenger, he is a Norman police officer. So they all have extensive law enforcement background and would be well suited for that position just with law enforcement going forward.
And Kayla, while I'm chatting with you, one of the other races I believe you are following is District 2 Commissioner, which involves Brian Mon.
Yes, so he has been the Oklahoma County Commissioner for District 2 since 2008, and he was ahead really handily the last time that I was looking. He had one challenger in the Republican primary, Jim Fisher, who is a longtime Oklahoma Highway Patrolman, but it seemed didn't have the kind of leverage that maybe he hoped for because Brian Mon was over, I think he was close to 60% of the vote. And so it looks like he's going to snag that one pretty easily and then head into a challenge with Democrat Spencer Hicks in November.
And Carmen, I'll come back to you because there's a couple of close races involving Representative Jason Dunnington and Representative A.J. Pittman.
Yeah. Dunnington, who represents the Paseo District, the Plaza District, really the heart of OKC. He looks like he's on track to lose. His opponent, Marie Turner, is a community organizer. She's very diverse. She's Black, queer, and she's Muslim. If elected, she would be the first Muslim legislator in Oklahoma. And it really does look like he's on track to lose. She's up by a couple hundred votes at this point. As for A.J. Pittman, Representative Pittman is up just a little bit, a couple percentage points, but it's still pretty close. And that's only with 62% of the precincts reporting. So that one could kind of go any way. And, you know, none of the elections are over until they're over. So any of them could go either way.
You're right about that. Chris, I'm going to come back to you. As you mentioned earlier, you've seen a ton of these races over the years. Any final thoughts? And we'll be back later tonight with another roundup. But any final thoughts as we wrap up this segment of things you're seeing at this point?
Well, again, I mean, I'm still there's still only like 40% of the vote in on the 5th District Republican race in the 5th. So I'm just going to be watching, how Bice does over the next, few sets of returns. It could change. I don't know. I mean, it seems like it's in kind of a steady pattern here, but as you said, you just never know. So I'll be still watching that.
That's why they play the game, ladies and gentlemen. You can follow along the elections all night long tonight on our website at Oklahoman.com. All my colleagues putting in lots of hours and lots of good effort tonight throughout the day, and of course in upcoming editions of the Oklahoman. But tonight you can follow those results, the social media feeds, and the stories, along with the photos, on our website at Oklahoman.com. I will be back with Kayla, Carmen, and Chris later tonight for another update. And for producer Paige Dillard, I'm Dave Morris from the Oklahoman saying thanks for tuning in.